So, the month of May, emotions. One of the things that my 27-year-old daughter is really good at is teaching me new things. If you have kids, you know, you learn more from your kids than anyone else in the world. So, many years ago, several years ago, I sent her a text about something. I don't even remember what it was. And she responded with one word: feels. Feels. I didn't even know what that meant. But when I asked about it, because you have to ask or you'll never figure it out, she said, "Oh, Mom, it's just a way of saying that whatever you said made me feel something emotionally." Feels. Like, Mom, I'm feeling something. So it's pretty vague, but at least I knew that I had gotten some sort of emotional response from her, right? So here's the deal. One of my missions as a mom was to help my daughter understand her feels or her emotions. I wanted her to understand them to a pretty sophisticated level. You see, when I was growing up, and we talked about this in our Sacred Cup discussion this morning, when I was growing up, there was really little tolerance for emotions in my home. Especially intense emotions experienced by anyone other than my dad. Now, my dad could be a firecracker, and maybe you can relate to that, but none of us were allowed to feel anything. Pretty much we're allowed to be mildly happy and pleasant, but we were kind of sent to our rooms if there was any other emotion that we needed to work through. So feeling sad, go to your room. Feeling mad, go to your room. Laughing too loud, well, there wasn't much room for that either. We were pretty much to be even keel. I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, "I'm going to give you something to cry about." Right? Okay, so I'm not the only one. So in all fairness to my parents and yours too, I think that was pretty much the experience of my peers, because that generation really had no training on handling complex emotions at all. So if you're anywhere near my age, you probably understand. Bet you can relate. But thankfully for many families, that's kind of changed over the years. So I wanted Kelsey to be emotionally intelligent. I wanted her to understand that emotions are just emotions. They're normal. They're healthy. They were hers to manage as she felt them, and that was her job. But we wanted her to know what she was feeling and talk about what she was feeling. So in the evenings, Sue Ann, Kelsey's other mom, and I would ask her things like, "What made you excited today?" Or, "Was there anything that scared you today?" Or, "Okay, what made you mad today? Were you embarrassed today? What did you laugh about today? Did you cry today?" We would share with her some of our own emotional experiences throughout the day too, because these kinds of discussions helped her figure out and explore the rich emotional landscape of each day, letting her know it was totally normal to feel the feelings that she was having, and it happens to all of us. I wanted her to feel the feels. That's my talk title today: Feel the Feels. As we go through this month of May, we're going to be focused on emotions and the spiritual purpose of emotions. We're going to talk about all the feels. So today I'm going to kind of explore the topic broadly. Then on the Sundays to come, we're going to dive deeper into more specifics about fear, happiness, anger, and sadness, and what those other major emotions have to teach us when we experience them. So if you were around here last year in 2021, I taught a class called Radical Self-Love, and we spent a whole week focused on just emotions. So there are some of you in the room who took that course, and what I've learned is that for many people, emotional responses to things can cause great shame. Like we kind of feel judged when we have a fearful response and everybody else is thrilled with the experience going on, or vice versa, right? And when emotions are not welcomed, we learn how to withhold them, and that's to our detriment. So this particular class, which was a favorite of a lot of people, was about learning to love ourselves emotionally. So I want to review some of that just a little bit. When our souls decided to come to this human plane of existence, we were given several tools to help guide us through being a human being. We were given a physical body. What do I call it? The magic suit. This is our magic suit, right? That was one of the tools we were given, and we're going to spend a whole month focused on our bodies, our magic suits. I think it's July or something. And then second, we were given a mind. We were given a mind, and we spent the whole month of February focused on our inner life and our thoughts. And third, we were given this emotional heart. our emotions, and we symbolize a heart. You know, our heart really pumps blood throughout our bodies, but we talk about our emotions coming from our heart. And this month we're going to talk about our heart of emotions and the purpose this tool plays in our humanness and what this tool brings to our souls, right? So we were given a mind, a body, and an emotional heart because our souls needed them. Ernest Holmes maintains that we were given what we were needed. And each one of those tools feeds our soul valuable information so that we can navigate this human plane in a productive way. So learning to have an open and aware relationship with each aspect of ourselves is critical to our evolutionary process. Why did we come here? Our heart's going to give us some information about that, so let's focus on the heart. Ernest Holmes, the writer, the author of Our Philosophy, maintained that everything in life has a spiritual purpose or it wouldn't exist. We have what our consciousness, we call that a soul, we have what we need. And he said, the heart is the center of divine love and perfect circulation. Love is at the center of man's being, women's beings too, for that matter, and the calm, continuous pulsations of life are governed by love. Basically, what he's saying is that at the spiritual center of our emotional being is love. And when we are aligned with love in a calm confidence, our life pulses with love. We send out love from ourselves into the world, and that is what is returned to us. See, in our spiritual perfection, our emotional quality is loving and peaceful and confident. However, when our human stuff gets involved, we introduce thoughts into the mix, and when we do that, thoughts drive a wide variety of emotions. Ernest Holmes also said, in the well-balanced person, emotion is controlled by the intellect, but in many people there's a conflict between the emotion and the intellect. Emotion uncontrolled produces chaos. How many of you can relate to that, right? So as human beings, we have our minds, our bodies, and our hearts. We learn pretty young that we are a fountain of feelings. Whether we're consciously aware of them or not, we have flowing through us a river of emotional energy. And this energy flows through us as joy, excitement, fear, anger, sadness, shame, disgust, and many other subtly different emotions. And sometimes our river of emotions is met by the people around us with care and understanding on the human plane. And we're encouraged to kind of develop our emotional intelligence. But sometimes when our river of emotions is met with resistance and lack of understanding, what do? We learn to block them. We block them. We block them from flowing out. We hide them because they're met with this opposing emotional energy that doesn't welcome ours into the mix. But as we learn to love ourselves more and understand ourselves more, we begin to understand that loving yourself means finding a balance to how much emotional input we let in from others and how much feeling we let out of ourselves. We spend most of our lives trying to figure that out, how to modulate our emotions both in and out. We're constantly rebalancing. Now, if we were in class, and as I did in the spiritual, Sacred Cup, can't talk this morning, I would ask the group, what contributes to who you are emotionally? And the answers this morning were things like personality type and training during your upbringing and your education level, your family conditioning, ethnicity and cultural differences contribute to our emotions. We could name a whole bunch more. But the bottom line is that all of us are emotional beings because we were all given the same tools when we came to be human. But all of us have different factors contributing to ourselves emotionally. Brene Brown is one of the great teachers of our time. And one of her missions is to help all of us gain an understanding of our internal experiences, especially our emotions. Her latest book is called Atlas of the Heart. And I quoted it in my newsletter article this week. In it, she outlines several kind of regions of the heart and attempts to map the emotions kind of related to each region. So, for example, one region is called Places We Go When We're Hurting. And she maps out the differences between anguish, hopelessness, sadness, and grief, and they're all slightly different. Another region is called Places We Go When It's Beyond Us. And she explores the varied emotions of awe and wonder and confusion, curiosity, interest, and surprise. And overall in this book, she teaches us about 89 subtly different emotional states. 89, right? And if you're interested in this topic at all, highly recommend Atlas of the Heart. Talk about feeling the feels, all 89 of them, right? But through reading Brené Brown and other authors, I've learned some key things I want to share with you. As human beings, we have two competing needs. We have a need for solitariness, separateness, and we have a need for belonging and closeness. And when we're healthy, we can move between being with people and being by ourselves, being a part of the group and being on our own. But often we get hurt. We get hurt in one of those two places. We either get hurt in a place of belonging and we withdraw and now we want to be by ourselves, or we get hurt when we're by ourselves and we get too clingy and want to be in the other one. And sometimes we get anchored in a feeling of I don't belong. I don't belong. I also want to say that if we don't have language around our emotions, we can get really limited on what we can feel. We're not accessing all 89 different emotions. And we're trying to categorize these very subtly different emotions into big categories. We're going to do that today: joy, fear, anger, sadness. And what that leads to us not being very flexible, not being able to share our emotional experiences in any kind of clarity, because we're trying to say just one word versus these little subtle words. If everything we feel is labeled by these big words, it's tempting to just go ahead and numb what we feel. You know, hopefully we can reach a point in our lives where we're truly ready to heal. We're truly ready to heal, and we're ready to start living in a more authentic way. And we realize that the first thing we have to do is stop numbing. We have to stop the numbing that we've been doing so that we can truly figure out what is really going on in our lives. We go to 12-step groups, or we go to therapy or support agencies, or even here to spirituality. We go somewhere to kind of start the journey of reawakening ourselves. Because Brené Brown says this: we cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions. You know, so often folks come here to spirituality very numb, and they walk into a room of people who are awake and feeling all the feels, and they're kind of a little bit blown away. But what I find to be beautiful is that over time, awakening starts to happen, and these positive emotions start spilling out as you start to heal the shame and uncomfortable places that you feel emotionally. Spirit embraces your pain, and spirit enhances your joy, because life starts to allow you to feel the feels again in a safe environment. And if we're going to embrace all the gifts that Spirit gave us, let's start with learning more about the wisdom of our emotional responses. And in order to learn about these emotions, we've got to feel them. We have to allow them. We have to appreciate them, all 89 of them, right? You know, our goal is to be a channel for love. This river that's running through us, we want it to be love. We want it to be a loving river, a loving flow. Our goal is to express the qualities of God on the emotional level. Our emotions can be an expression of light and harmony too. But let me be super clear. Emotions are meant to be felt. Emotions are here to inform us and teach us about our movement in the world. We've got to learn to respect our emotional response and listen to them. Have you ever heard emotions described as energy in motion, emotion? If you can pay attention to your emotions, you'll find that they come in waves. A single emotional wave is said to last 90 seconds. So a wave of despair, 90 seconds. A wave of anger, 90 seconds. A wave of passion, 90 seconds. And you live here near the beach. What happens with waves? If you don't work with the wave, it's going to knock you down, right? If you stand in resistance to a wave, you're in trouble. So we learn to surf them. We learn to ride the waves. We learn to let the waves help you back up to the beach, right? You work with them. It's the same with emotional waves. Don't fight them. If you're in a place where you can take a minute and a half to yourself, allow the emotional response to wash through you. Pay attention. Feel your skin kind of flush, or your eyes well up, or your heart rate surge. Feel those waves. Breathe and try to relax as it passes. Feel the feels. And you know what? If you're in a socially awkward place where it's not really cool to feel whatever you feel, try to take a minute for yourself. A minute and a half, actually. Go to the bathroom or step out to your car or do something to pay attention to what you feel. Or a better suggestion is to just sit in the moment and be honest and say, hold on a second, what you just said made me feel something, and let me just give me a minute and let me think about what you just said, or let me feel what you just said. It's a practice I recommend. You know, our minister's notes today about the topic likened emotions to spices. And I think that's an interesting analogy, because spices are used to add flavor. And they must be respected and blended together to create the right flavor. And this human experience is flavored with emotional spices. Some are sweet, some are tart, some are hot, some are odd to describe. And maybe you need to look at your spice rack of life and learn to appreciate all 89 bottles you got. And you know what? Some personality types like a lot of spice and some don't. Some don't like the intensity. They shy away from that big flavor. No judgment. Just like some people like to sweat when they eat hot food and some people don't want peppers at all. It's okay. We don't judge. We just understand that everyone's developing their own spice palette, right? But let's face emotional responses to life with the same sense of respect and a deep curiosity. Let's create a community together where emotions are welcomed. And let's strive to understand that each individual will respond differently as they reach for a different bottle of spice on their rack. Because, we were taught that some emotions are good and some emotions are bad. Some are allowed, some are forbidden. But the truth is they're all bringing their own unique gift of flavor to our experiences. And let's learn to not run from them. I love that you brought up spiritual bypassing, because I really encourage you to not just stand behind this teaching and say, it's all God, it's all good. No. Instead, allow your spiritual practice to help you work with the emotional wave, breathe through it, and listen to it. Because behind the emotion is a belief or a thought, and uncovering what that underlying thing is can really help you grow. I created a handout for you. I'm going to ask Lori to pass those out so that you can take these home and use your emotions to inform you. And these are paraphrased from the book we used in our spiritual leadership class, and I'll briefly go over the handout that you can take home and dive into. It breaks it down into 4 emotions to explore: anger, fear, sadness, and joy. And it talks about the fact that anger is the healthy emotion, tells us that something is not or no longer of service. Something is out of alignment. It's got to be changed so that something more beneficial can replace it, or that a boundary needs to be set, or one is being violated. Anger. It's here to tell you something. Unhealthy anger is all about blame and righteousness and criticism. And then fear. The healthy part of fear is that something important needs to be known or faced. Fear tells you to wake up and be fully attentive and present. unconscious or unhealthy fear is almost always about an imagination. I'm going to repeat that, an imagination about an uncomfortable future. That's almost always what unhealthy fear is about. Sadness. This healthy emotion tells you that something needs to be released and let go. Something meaningful is going away. Unhealthy sadness is an overwhelming belief in poor me, like something is happening to me. An unhealthy sadness can stay under the surface long term. Instead of the 90-second wave, you can just sit in sadness. And then there's joy. The healthy emotion tells you that something or someone needs to be celebrated, supported, appreciated, laughed about, or encouraged. It's an internal state of well-being. An unhealthy joy is conditional on circumstances, and it's gone when the circumstances change. It can also just be a smile pasted on for other people, right? So take that home with you. I invite you to journal. Journaling is one of the key spiritual methods for exploring emotions. Asking the question and writing out your intuitive answers can be powerful. Why did this make me angry? What are my tears really about? Each one of us has this deep intuitive guide inside of us, and journaling can often give you access to that part of yourself. The world that we live in right now is constantly exposing us to this highly charged information and experiences. I have seen more anxiety and depression, frustration and confusion in the past couple of years than I've seen in my whole life. There's extreme local and national and global events and circumstances that are happening all around us all the time. And many of us have been on this hyperdrive, emotionally, charged place. And it's a constant effort to kind of work through these opportunities of emotional learning and healing so that we're not out of balance and saturated in one direction or another. So how can we use this lesson in a practical way? I always like to be practical. First, I invite you to educate yourself. Educate yourself on the different types of emotions and intensities of emotions. There's lots of books to explore about the topic, and there are also really great documentaries about it. Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown I will give you, but I'll also give you a documentary series called The Me You Can't See. The Me You Can't See, it's fabulous. And remember that almost all of our spiritual classes include emotional intelligence content, so that's really a good thing. Number 2, set an intention to stay aware of your emotional state. Be aware. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Set a timer several times a day. What am I feeling right now? Become aware of your emotional waves and kind of practice surfing them all the way back to the beach, all the way back to solid ground. And use this handout to figure out what is your emotion trying to tell you. Number 3, purposefully seek emotional balance. So if you have too much of one kind of emotional stimulation or another, seek out others. Find activities that open your heart to feeling compassion and laughter and serenity. Number 4, establish a spiritual practice around emotional health. Daily prayer for emotional balance and harmony could be one, or carry a notebook to write down what it is you're feeling when an emotional wave hits you. My emotions are healthy and they teach me could be a mantra for you. Number 5, get the help you need for your emotional health. Therapeutic group or individual work can be so healing and helpful, but at a minimum, surround yourself with friends who respect your emotions and give space for your spice, if you will. And lastly, come to the next several Sunday lessons because we are going to do a deeper dive into fear, joy, anger, and sadness. Will you join me in prayer? Here is what I know. What I know is that God shows up in each emotional heart. God is the energy of life that flows through each one of us as our thoughts and our emotions. And we invite ourselves to become a channel of love, a channel of balance and freedom. And I know that for each one listening to this, there is an opening today, an opening of possibility and willingness to feel the feels and know that they're all good, they're all for us, they're all here to inform us and teach us something. And so we feel them. And I invite Spirit to be a part of each journey beyond this moment as a comfort, as a healing force around any emotional experience that we have. So I call that all good and all into the now moment. And we release it by saying together, and so it is.
Thanks,